Let's take up the one and only item 1.
Item 1 is a communication from the Mayor and Chief Legislative Analyst reports relative to recommendations for the 2010 state legislative program from the following city departments: Animal Services, Housing, Personnel, Transportation, Library, Commission on Children, Youth, and Their Families, Commission on the Status of Women, Bureau of Engineering, Bureau of Contract Administration, Board of Fire and Police Pensions, and Information Technology Agency, among others.
Among others. Well, thank you to the departments who did their homework, and this is part of our continuing effort, along with the mayor's office, to really coordinate, per the charter, an aggressive legislative agenda at the state and national levels to sponsor legislation that will be of benefit to the people of Los Angeles. And we appreciate what the work you've put into this. It's obviously on top of all the rest of the duties that you have, but it serves us all very well to leverage what we can do at the local level with our friends who are there at the state and national level. So with that, why don't we will go kind of swiftly through each one. I'll ask folks not to, I think the documentation is pretty clear, not to, make long speeches, but to give us an overview, especially for those who may be listening on phone and stuff, to some of the items that you prioritize as your top items to move forward as part of adoption by the City Council and signature from the Mayor as part of our official legislative agenda. So we're focusing on state program today, and with that, why don't we start with A, and Animal Services?
Animal Services.
A is for Animal Services. Come on forward, Mr. Brooks. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Sure, absolutely.
My comments can be very brief. This basically is a proposal that is consistent with the city's recent spay-neuter ordinance, and it addresses the number of animals that come into our shelter each year that are returned to their owners in the neighborhood of 4,500 to 5,000 animals. And this would allow us, these are typically the animals that are a significant portion of the problem within the city of Los Angeles, animals running at large, chasing children on school grounds, bites, attacks, things of that sort. So that when we have gone to the trouble of impounding these animals and then are able to release them to their owner, to require them to be spay-neutered prior to release would tremendously mitigate the level of animal control problems we have in the city, and over time would, we believe it would reduce the cost of animal control.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And we have this as internal policy already in the city, is that correct? Oh, we do have a quorum. Quorum just walked in, Mr. Zion. Do we have
No.
this as internal policy right now?
It is not internal policy.
Not.
We don't have the
So this
authority.
would, and we'd be looking at sponsoring this specifically for Los Angeles or for the entire state?
The recommendation is for the entire state.
Okay. All right. Okay. Seems like a sound thing to do. There's one other recommendation you had made? One other proposal?
There was a second recommendation. The CLA doesn't share our enthusiasm for it, but it would require landlords with 50 units or more to set aside at least 20% of their units for pets adopted from municipal shelters.
Okay.
And that would tremendously open our market for pet adoptions.
Okay. Why don't we move on the first as recommended by the CLA, and let's hold on that other one, and we can look into it as to not kill it, but to keep it in committee for further review. Any further comments from Mr. Zion? The first one, and we're looking at all the state legislative proposals from different departments. Right. We started with Animal Services, and this one would be to sponsor a bill for mandatory spay and neuter of owned dogs and cats if impounded. So if whenever they come through the system, the 4,500 to 5,000 would get spayed and neutered. Okay? Yeah. All right. Okay. We'll move that. Thank you very much. Thanks for your patience waiting. Next department.
The City Administrative Office submitted a proposal, but it came in late, so we're still taking a look at that, and we'll report that out when appropriate. So the next.
That's not like an internal CLA-CAO thing you're looking at? Okay. All right.
The next is the Commission on Children, Youth, and Their Families.
All right. CCYF. Come on forward. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, council members.
How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Good.
Ms. Diaz with the Commission for Children, Youth, and Their Families. Yep. We have essentially two recommendations. The first one has two parts and has to do with the federal legislation that's passed through the state, the Safety Lou funding for infrastructure projects and non-infrastructure projects. And essentially right now, the Safe Routes to School non-infrastructure projects receive 30% of the state funding, and 70% goes to infrastructure projects. We're recommending that percentage be increased from 30 to 40%, and also to
Is there
extend.
flexibility of up to that, or is it mandate that 40% be?
No, that there be some flexibility.
Okay.
And then also, more importantly, the second part of that first recommendation is that we extend the grant funding cycle from 1 year to 2 to 3 consecutive years in order to fully implement it and minimize the unnecessary administrative costs to administer that project. The second recommendation has to do with funding that we received from the State Crime Prevention Act of 2000 for our YWAR program, the Young Women from Adversity to Resiliency. And essentially, it's the same kind of recommendation for that project, again, extending the 1 year funding to at least 2 to 3 consecutive years in order to reduce the administrative costs, but also to sustain the continuity of the program.
Okay. All right.
John Wickham with CLA's office. The commission brought to our attention that the resolution we had prepared identified this as the Department of Transportation's recommendation. It's actually commission's recommendation. So we've drafted a revised resolution to substitute the resolution on the file.
Okay. Great.
For the first recommendation.
For the
Right,
first
so item 1. Okay. I have no questions. Those are both good recommendations. Mr. Zine? Anything?
The Safe Routes to School non-infrastructure project, what would that be?
For instance, that funding goes actually to support the Watch the Road program. That's actually a program that's funded for DOT, but for our commission, it funds the Kid Watch program, like the Safety Valet, but also that promotes traffic safety, and also our walking school bus that engages parents to help walk the children to school. And actually, when we submitted this proposal, we were in competition for the state funding when we did receive notification that we did get funding for both those two separate projects for our Kid Watch program, and then we also submitted a separate application, so we actually did get funding for these non-infrastructure programs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, we'll move approval of the CLA's recommendations on both of those. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate the work. Next department.
The Commission on the Status of Women.
Okay. Come on down. You have 3 recommendations.
Yes. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Kelly Hawkins with the Commission on the Status of Women. Our first proposal looks at domestic violence victims with limited English proficiency, and this would basically allow the state to reimburse these victims for interpreter services that they actually are investing in during their medical services and the whole investigation. The second one that we're looking at is gender equality, basically looking at how do we achieve gender equity on college campuses, and it seeks to create an office of gender equity and appoint a Title IX compliance officer that would report to that office through the regions of the UC system. And so this would basically allow for greater participation, encouraging greater participation, expenditures, and grants for women's athletic programs there on the university campuses, hopefully reducing in the end the number of lawsuits on against the UC and the CSU system.
And so you'd also include the CSU oversight?
Right.
It's not Board of Regents, it's...
The state university system.
Yeah, they'd be included, okay.
Right. And then finally, the workplace protections, which I think really...
I'm sorry to interrupt you. One last thing on that. Any reason to exclude the community
Community
college?
colleges, no, they should be included.
Okay. All right.
The last one is the workplace protections for those that are victims of domestic violence and sexual assault victims in the workplace. This would actually complement what we're currently doing with the city's domestic violence workplace policy. Currently, we have trained 30 of the departments within the city as of September 30th, 2008. The goal is by January 2009, all departments will have received this citywide training. This particular legislation looks at just basically putting up posters of survivor listing what the survivor rights are. A lot of the cases that call into the commission a lot of times are around this exact issue of, I'm not sure what my rights are, can you basically help me here? And so during these trainings that we've been conducting with the Domestic Violence Task Force, it's actually allowed us to give them other materials, but I think a mechanism like this would be very useful here for us in the city, and definitely statewide would complement others' efforts as well.
Okay, great. And on the first one, I'd like to follow up. I think we can be helpful in finding a legislator to actually perhaps move that piece of legislation. So let's go ahead and adopt it, but we'll work with you on that. And I think there's a couple people we might be able to reach out to who can introduce that. So,
Excellent.
Any questions, Mr. Zahn? No? Okay. No? Any comments, Mr. Celia? Okay,
no.
we'll move those
Great.
3 recommendations. Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Next department.
Next is the Bureau of Contract Administration.
All right. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and Commissioner Zine. My name is, Council Member Zine.
I'm a commissioner with the county.
That's
okay.
true. My name is Chris Jensen. I'm the Senior Labor Compliance Analyst for the City of Los Angeles. As part of the Bureau of Contract Administration, our duty, our responsibility is monitoring the payment of prevailing wages on the city's public works projects. We are very good at what we do. We are recognized throughout the state as being the model program. We've been certified by the state. There are currently about 485 programs. We were the 8th program, and as I said, the model program. From time to time in our duties, we will come across violations of apprenticeship requirements. They go hand in hand. We will find workers who are underpaid, as well as problems with not using proper apprentices, using too many apprentices for the number of journeymen present, that sort of thing. We have the authority to deal with the public works, the prevailing wage violations. However, with the apprenticeship violations, we have no authority to deal with those. The state law requires us to turn those over to the Division of Apprenticeship Standards. Division of Apprenticeship Standards, while they are very good people, this is no exaggeration, there are 2.5 people to deal with all of the thousands and thousands of public works projects that are going on in the state of California. The City of Los Angeles has right now about 580 projects ourselves. If you add in the County of Los Angeles, the county of, say, Kern County, all the various 55 counties up and down the state, all the cities, then throw in all the school districts, all the water districts, 2.5 people. They clearly, they're good people, but they can't do the job. So our proposal was to write legislation which would give the city the authority to monitor and enforce apprenticeship requirements on our own projects. We have, basically our staff is already trained in it because, as I said, it goes hand in hand. We've got our boots on the ground, so to speak. We're there, we see the violations, we know exactly what to do, but because the legislation does not allow us to do it, we have to turn it over to a state agency.
Okay.
What we are proposing is rewriting legislation which would give us that authority.
Great. No. Sounds like a good thing. And I know we've been talking to some folks about what we can do on the contract side to give further incentives for those who are doing the right things by the apprenticeships, especially right now with downturn in the economy. Just introduced a motion a couple days ago that's referred to you guys, so we'll follow that along. But this seems like a good program. Any questions, Mr.
I
Sun?
just have one question. The half person, is that person taller or shorter than our assistant city attorney?
I've never actually met that half person.
Well, there he is right there.
I know the city attorney.
He's a full person. All right.
I do want to say also
Yep.
that just before coming up here, I met with Commissioner Julie Gutman.
Mm-hmm.
She wants to enforce that she is, or I should say emphasize, that she is very much in support of this also.
Okay.
And she has already contacted your office about a possible
Yep.
meeting.
Great.
So,
Super.
Sounds
Thank
like
you
a
very much.
wonderful idea.
We will go ahead and move that then.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Department of Water and Power submitted some proposals yesterday, the day before, and there's a lot of crossover between recommendations in the mayor's report as well. So it looks appropriate to sit down with the mayor's office and
Yeah.
DWP, consolidate, coordinate the proposals that are coming forward, and bring those forward to you for your next
That
meeting.
sounds good, and I know we've been in communication with the mayor's office about that, so we can maybe hold those items and we'll bring them forward together. That'd be a good idea.
Okay.
The next.
Next is the Bureau of Engineering.
BOE. Excuse me. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Mike Cantor with the Bureau of Engineering, Deputy City Engineer. I believe we have, is it two items? There's three?
Three. Let's see if you can remember them
We
all.
have a total of four.
You
And then
did.
you want to combine two with the transportation issues?
The CLA recommended three of the items and holding the fourth. The fourth item related to the safety lieu money. And the city's transportation committee is currently looking at citywide priorities for the safety lieu funding. And so it seemed appropriate to hold back on that recommendation and and then move the other three forward.
I got 4 here.
Yes.
Well, let's hear the
Okay.
first three, and you can
Yeah.
just mention the fourth, and we'll decide what to do with that. Okay.
Okay. Right now there's two items that I have to discuss. I'm not.
Which ones? I have Survey Monument Preservation
Survey Monument
Fund.
Preservation and the Los Angeles River Revitalization.
Okay. We also have
Master
funding from Prop 1B.
The 6th Street Viaduct.
For the
Okay,
6th Street Viaduct.
okay, all right, so that's not being combined. Okay,
Yep.
very good. I'll start with the Survey Monument Preservation Fund. This is, there's $10 that is collected when you have certain grant deeds are conveyed. And what we're doing is there's an exemption in the current law that exempts grant deeds created by recorded track maps. And so we're proposing to eliminate that exemption. And what it would do is it would increase the number of these $10 collections that we would make by about 80%.
How much do you collect total? How much is 8% record?
Right now, it's about 40,000, and we think that if with this change, it would be about 200,000. So what it would do is just allow the surveyors to preserve
80%.
a lot more survey monuments each year. And I believe the CLA proposed considering increasing the fee, which I think that's
Yes.
a reasonable consideration.
The County of Los Angeles has the ability to raise this fee from the current $10 to another amount. The County of Orange raised their fee to $20. And so this would be another way for the city and for the county to generate additional revenue and provide these important services to survey the monuments.
And the county got that from state legislation as well?
State legislation is already structured in a way that would allow the county to make an independent decision.
Okay. All right. And we'd be asking for a similar criterion, or similar way of having the discretion ourselves? Or would it be one time?
It would be we would be asking the county to raise the fee. It would be any time that,
I got you. Okay, from the county side. Okay. All right.
Great.
Do you have any questions about that particular one? Okay. All right, next one.
I'll move on to the Los Angeles River Revitalization Master Plan.
Thank you.
The master plan is the vision document. It sets the framework for all future river-related development, and there's a lot of funding needs in order to implement the plan. And the proposal, we discuss a lot of federal, state, and local areas where we would need to obtain external sources of funding. But the whole purpose is to get those external sources of funding to implement the plan, and so it's advocating allocation of funds from the federal level, through the U.S. Army Corps and through the Water Resources Development Act. There was a $25 million that was authorized in the Water Resources Development Act that needs to be appropriated, and so it's really just supporting these these issues in order to get the funding, the external funding to implement the plan.
Okay. And the prioritization will reflect the BOE's prioritization list within the plan, the master plan, in terms of the speed, or is it, we had a presentation, the ad hoc committee, that looked at which items would be phased in what order, and I assume that's
Right.
the order that you'd be looking at for the applications? as
Yes.
well? Okay.
Yes.
All right. 6th Street Viaduct, can you talk
Okay.
about
All right. 6th Street. 6th Street is, as you know, it's primarily funded in the Highway Bridge Program. It's the total estimated cost right now is $400+ million, and through the Federal Highway Administration, there's the 88% match on the funds. Also, the local match is proposed to be provided by the Infrastructure State Bond 1B, which was passed in 2006. And so what we are doing is we want to make sure that the program money can be available for the 6th Street Viaduct. It has a seismic deficiency currently, plus it also suffers from the alkali silica reaction. And so what we want to do is try and maximize the allocation of 1B funds for the project. Right now we have, CD14, Mayor's Office, LADOT, City Planning, Caltrans are all supportive of the project.
Mm-hmm.
As far as opposition, it's really the other projects in the state that are going to be competing for the same funding.
And we're opposed to them equally. All right, we'll move those three. And what the safety loo recommendations you made were for what?
We had, I believe the safety loo was at the First Street Viaduct project. I know.
Yeah.
I believe that there was about $1 million in safety loo that was available.
So, Sepulveda, Wilshire to Skirball, Wilshire Boulevard, Selby to Comstock,
Yeah.
Harborview to
This is a variety of street improvement projects
Okay.
around the city.
Right. Now, I guess the CLA recommendation was to,
Consolidate.
to combine those, consolidate, and look at that citywide.
Okay, yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
wise to do in our transportation committee. So we'll move the first three then, and we'll refer that over to the discussions in transportation committee. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
And
next.
next is the Board of Fire and Police Pensions.
I'll defer to Mr. Zine on all of this.
Good afternoon. Bill Raggio with Fire and Police Pensions. The Brown Act currently allows commissioners to participate in meetings via teleconference, but they do not count towards a quorum if they participate outside city limits. So in the last 12 months, we've had 24 meetings, 9 of which commissioners participated via teleconference. So we're asking that they be allowed to be counted towards a quorum if they participate through teleconference outside city limits, which would allow the 5 appointed members of our 9-member board to pursue their business travel, since they're fully employed outside city service, and to meet their commitments to the commission meetings.
Is this legislation unique to commissioners, Mr. CLA, or is this for all? I mean, Brown Act is written for all public officials, right?
Yes, it is. And we could ask that the legislation be tightened to only cover commissioners, or it could be, we could ask for it, so that, our council, who's at the National League of Cities, could participate in a council meeting with those members who didn't go,
Right.
and have that be a quorum,
Yep.
for example. And there could be some flexibility when we're negotiating the legislation.
Now, my understanding on this, and correct, maybe the city attorney knows this, you can do this in some limited settings, but wherever the people are in teleconference, that has to be a publicly accessible place where members of the public can come to?
That's correct. And it has to be posted there during the 24 hours, if it's a special meeting, 72 hours beforehand.
So,
you can't do it
would
in
that
a...
would that have to be changed for this to be practicable? I mean, if somebody's in a hotel room at a Comfort Inn in Wisconsin, and they would then have to post it, 72 hours in advance or 24 hours in advance at least.
I don't think the Brown Act deals with practicality.
Right. I've noticed that over time. But in your interpretation, we would need a change probably to that piece too if this was to be workable. Because I assume these are people on the road and they're going to be teleconferencing in from what sorts of facilities? Do you have any?
Yes,
using
typically
their
it could be
computers
an
or-
office outside city limits or a hotel room. It could be.
Yeah, although it has to be accessible to the public and ADA accessible, and again, posted.
What's the justification for that? I mean, obviously, if people can, as long as there's a place, like right now, we don't, the folks who testify from Van Nuys don't see us face to face, but we see them, they see us electronically. Why is that not as sufficient, as long as there's electronic access to watch the commissioners or the members?
Well, and also people have to be able to provide public comment at the other location where the commissioners are. The Van Nuys situation, that's just a remote access. It's not a teleconference location.
Well, I think we'd need to know, we need to have some answers to that before we could authorize that. Either we'd need to be more aggressive with what we're recommending to make the changes in the Brown Act to waive those requirements, or else we should hold it. Would you like us to try to push forward with making that not a requirement as well as part of our legislative platform? Or would you?
Typically, right now, when we have a commission meeting, we will advertise the location that the commissioner is taking place via teleconference. So, however,
Like you'll put the hotel that they're in or
we'll
whatever?
put the address, yes. I guess, however, the city attorney would advise pursuing it would be fine with us.
Okay. Well, Mr. Zion, you have any thoughts on it?
What about video conferencing? You got teleconference. What about video?
There's video.
Is both? Or this is just tele?
We are not.
One's with the picture, one's without.
Right.
So I understand.
Currently, we're only set up for teleconference, and we do not have any video capabilities.
Because they should include it in there. Allow commission participates in meeting via video or teleconference. Should include both, because the new technology, it's not that expensive. It's hooking up to the phone lines now, where the camera's right there. I think we should extend this to council meetings.
Teleconferencing is a defined term in the Brown Act, and within that, it refers both
Includes
to the video and
It
the,
just
Yeah.
covers both?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then whether applied to all legislative bodies or whether language would be carefully crafted. Well, you've got the Public Works Commission, you got Police Commission, Fire Commission, you got a bunch of commissions.
Yeah.
Ethics Commission, you got. so would this
All the
apply to
various
all?
departmental commissions.
To be applied to all?
Yeah.
Airport, harbor?
Yes.
And then should there be a requirement that they, say you have a meeting every month, the police commission meets every week, that there have to be a certain number of meetings where they attend a facility? Or you could have all the commission meetings on teleconferencing?
Well, they could be special meetings.
I mean, should there be some requirement, all commissioners to participate in meetings?
Is it only the Fire and Police Pension Commission that's asked?
Yes.
Or brought this up before?
Yes.
But once it
you have,
goes-
because we have very busy, obviously, commissioners and commissions, airport commission, I mean, people who have very vigorous, busy lives as well. Just interesting that you're the only one who's brought it forward. I imagine it isn't a unique problem. I mean, we get actually the attendance of all of our commissions, so we get to see, I think the departments get to see those too, but we get to see how many meetings each one of the commissioners goes to, and certainly attendance is a problem on a number of those commissions, but
Well, this is police and fire pension. I could see most of, not all, taking advantage of it. And then you've got the situation, how often do they meet in person? Do we need
how
to
often are your meetings?
Twice a month.
Twice a month.
Some
About like
commissions
that.
meet once a week,
Yep.
and some, Public Works is once a week.
Yep. Why don't we do this? Why don't we hold for a little bit more research on this? I hate to do it on the fly, but we'll probably move something forward. But let me just look into a couple of those issues, and we'll see if we can take this up at the next Rules Committee meeting when we take up some of the other proposals that we talked about moving forward. And we'll do a little due diligence on this with the City Attorney's Office. Okay.
Great.
Thanks very much for the suggestion. Appreciate it.
Thank
Okay. Next department.
Next is the Housing Department.
All right. Is Mr. Weiss available on teleconference, or?
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Yolanda Chavez with the Housing Department. The Housing Department has three key state legislative proposals. The first one is securing a direct allocation of low-income housing tax credits for the city. This would enable us to be able to direct development and target our priorities for these tax credits. The second one is securing a state Mental Health Services Act housing funds for the city through an agreement with the county, whereby the city, LHD, would recommend projects for funding and underwriting on the capital side, and the county would do the social service component of the process. And finally, supporting the creation of a permanent source of funds for the state Housing and Community Development Department for their programs once Prop 1C funds are depleted, which is expected in 2010. On the first one, in terms of the tax credit allocation, you approved a motion last Friday, I believe, asking us for a report back outlining the benefits and the steps we would take to secure the allocation. And so we would like to come back with that report.
So you would not want us to move this before the report, or would you want us to?
Well, we'd like you, I think we'd like to, I think, wait for the report because there may be a way to secure this allocation without going through the legislative process. We may be able to secure some type of agreement directly with the state to be able to provide the direct allocation to the city. And so we'd like to talk to a few more people at the state to see what is the best way to proceed.
This doesn't obligate us to go through, even though we call it the city's state legislative program, it doesn't obligate us to go through a formal legislative.
In
process.
fact, the requirements are that we can't have any communications with state agencies on matters like this, whether it's administrative or legislative. So there would have to be an
without
action.
taking a position. So
Yes.
I think when we have here in the letter that I put forward the state legislative program, that is a broad term for our discussions with any
So we
state
would like
agency.
you,
then
we would like you to move it.
because there may have been some conversations, and that's just a good reminder for all departments as well. It's a very confusing charter these days because the council adopts, the mayor signs, but then hires, and that person works for the mayor. It gets very confusing. Sometimes council members will be speaking on their behalf, mayor will speak on his behalf. Legislators don't know where the city is, and sometimes those can be in contradiction. So part of this is to try to establish that, and if departments can please, when those conversations are going on, alert the CLA and alert the mayor's office so we can coordinate those and know that is very helpful to our efforts as well. So no harm, no foul in this one, but this will hopefully be the last one, and we can get that process smoother. On the Mental Health Services Act funding, not as part of course, official positions of the city, but I've been discussing with the author of the proposition that moved that forward, who's our incoming President Pro Tem for the State Senate, the possibilities of what we could do similar to the tax credits, maybe even get a direct allocation for the city. So I would amend that to pursue that the city, or amend that the city pursue a direct allocation of MHSA funding, which I assume you wouldn't have a problem with. That would be even more helpful.
Yes.
Okay.
It would be.
And failing that we look at a collaborative agreement, as a backup strategy with the County of Los Angeles. Okay.
And then finally, on the last one, the State Housing and Community Development Department expects to provide their list of proposals by November, by next month. So once we have that list, we would come forward with a recommendation to you on supporting the permanent sources of funding for this effort.
Okay. But you're in favor of establishing a permanent source?
Yes, definitely.
Well, we could authorize that today, too, I
Okay.
think, to work on that as part of our official legislative program. So
Okay.
I would move to do that.
And I expect that you would like the CLA's office to revise the resolution concerning the mental health
Yeah.
funding to include the recommendation that you've made, so that when this comes forward to council, that revised
Absolutely.
resolution will
Yeah.
be in front of you.
Please. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next department.
The next, the Human Relations Commission submitted a package, but there was a substantial amount of information missing. So we need to have some conversations with them, identify exactly what they're talking about, and then we'll bring that forward to you at your next meeting.
Okay.
Next is Information Technology Agency.
All right. ITA. First is to move to bring all cable systems back to local control. Interesting. Interesting.
Good afternoon. William Imperial from the Information Technology Agency. Which one would you like to handle first?
Whichever one you want.
Well, let's go with the DBS broadcasting, the digital broadcasting satellite tax. This is an old issue that the
Yep.
state of California has taken up before, as you're aware, Councilman Garcetti and Councilman Zine. It has to be done at the state level because federal law precludes cities and counties from imposing a tax on satellite carriers.
And
Or
this
satellite
exists
operators.
in some states, like Florida, right, has one?
Yes, there are 11 states
11.
that have a tax,
Mm-hmm.
as much as 13%. Most are at around 6%, which would be in line with what our current cable operators have been will be paying. By the way, we now receive a 5% general franchise fee, gross revenue franchise fee from our current incumbent cable operators. That will increase by 1%, an additional 1% overall. For PEG capital use, PEG access capital use,
And
under
that
the new state law.
includes the AT&T and Verizon, the new technologies? They pay that as well?
That will include them as well, and the telephone companies are paying the 1% right now in the city of Los Angeles.
And the 5%?
And the 5%, yes. So that would create if the tax is imposed at the state level, that would create a level playing field for the cable operators, and would impose the tax, and we could then, if the monies are passed on through to the city, we could then utilize that money for general funding purposes. There may be an issue with the 1% of the 6% that we're asking for, but I think we can work that out.
Mm-hmm. All right. Mr. Zine never met a tax he didn't like, so I know he's for that one.
Estimated amount we collect?
Thank you. We ran the numbers, and there's an issue over the penetration rate of the cable operators, the satellite operators. And the amount right now that we estimate, we're giving a conservative estimate of $9 million. A higher end would be somewhere between 10 and $15 million if the penetration rate is assumed to be 35 to 40%.
So this is satellite. What about AT&T or their operation?
They pay under the cable rates.
They're already paying.
So this would include everyone, other than regular TV?
We hear often from the cable companies that they're an unfair playing field
Right,
because
I've heard that.
this would equalize it.
DirecTV and
Dish TV.
Dish TV.
Yes.
So the current providers that are not included will be included, so everyone will pay the same fee?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
And that would help with the question that came up about where we get more money.
Yep. There you go.
And there is
5,000 square foot home.
if I might add, there is a resolution that was submitted by the CLA's office in support of that.
It is on the agenda.
It's
a tax.
The record, Mr. Zine has both the
We're broadening the
$5,000
tax base.
house. He has the Dish TV and cable.
And rabbit ears.
All right. Number two.
Yes, coming back to old issues that get a new life again. In regard to the 311 funding that we're asking the state to take up, currently the state imposes a fee on interstate telecommunication services to fund 911 calls, and we're asking that a new surcharge be added to that to allow us to obtain money for our 311 operations here in the city. This was actually taken up by Hertzberg in the year 2001. It was introduced as AB 1477. It was it would have created a revenue stream to fund 311 operations, maintenance, and capital improvements. It was actually passed by the Assembly and Senate on two separate occasions, but was vetoed by Governor Gray, by the way. So there is some historical precedence to continue to ask for this, especially given the current funding crisis that I think all entities are facing, public entities are facing.
All right.
And there is a resolution as well that's included in the packet from the
Great.
CLA's office.
Okay. Super. We'll see if we can. Let's go ahead and adopt those both then. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And next is the library department.
Library. Hi.
Pat Kiefer with the Library Department. State Bill 1516 is a bill for bonds, library construction and renovation bonds. It's a proposed bill that provides $4 billion in state monies to fund public library construction and renovation. There's a requirement of the bond that there are 35% in local funds made available and 65% in state matching bonds. The competitive grants are made in the amounts of $500,000 to $30 million. It's our understanding that this bill has gone to a suspense file situation, and the only hopes of it getting out is for the governor and the legislative body to recognize the need to improve libraries in California and perhaps some impetus for construction and local hiring that would be done.
There was a statewide library bond on a couple of years ago, was it?
In 2000, there was a statewide library bond. We received one grant out of that.
Wasn't there one that was proposed more recently? Am I just imagining that at the state level? That and failed, right? Yeah, two years ago, was it? Yeah. Okay. So this would try to overcome that and do something similar, but
Right.
go good.
Yeah.
And how does this impact our local look at potentially doing a local bond on construction and renovation of libraries with this?
Well, I mean, we've looked at a new facilities master plan, have come up with libraries that could be built. Right now, we are nowhere with getting it funded or finding any available monies for it.
But if we were to go forward with this, is that in place of and with the hope?
It would probably fund one or two branch libraries. It wouldn't fund all
Okay.
12 that I think that we have
Okay.
proposed.
A lot of the state grants or bonds require local matching funds as well, so they're actually complementary in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Design?
On our build-out of libraries, how many more need to be built or renovated? Because we had a major campaign a couple years ago.
Right. We have just finished, we're just finishing that up with the opening of the new Silver Lake Library, I believe. How many do we have, Juliana? On the new?
On the new, we have 19 projects.
19 projects
Okay,
on
so
the.
how many more do we
Come
need?
forward just because some people listen on the microphone,
Then
on
you're looking
telephone. We
for
don't want to deny them the
$4
great
billion.
testimony.
$4 billion. The local taxpayers paid for a bond measure, and under that previous lady went to New York, Susan, was her name Susan?
What, our city librarian?
Librarian?
Yeah.
Fontaine Homes and
No,
Susan Kent.
before her.
Susan Kent.
Susan Kent. Under her administration, they were finishing them on time, within budget, below budget, and I thought everything was looking good. So how many more do we have that need to be renovated or?
We are looking at, as Juliana said, 19 new libraries. A lot of these are libraries that are in old buildings that need to be renovated, in buildings that have outlasted their usage, and a lot of them are in areas that don't currently have libraries that have the population that would support a brand-new library.
Oh, so the 19 are projects that you have on the map, not completed projects?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So is $4 billion going to be spread throughout the state?
It would be spread throughout the state through grant applications
And how
from
much?
libraries throughout California.
How much do we need for the 19?
Based on March 2007 number, for the 19 total would be about 400 million.
So we could take up their whole.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Yep.
You all right with it? Okay.
Okay.
All right, we will go ahead and adopt that. Thank you. Next item, please.
Next is the Personnel Department.
All right. Personnel.
The Personnel Department proposed 5 items, and the CLA report recommends 4 of those. The fifth regarding automatic enrollment of all new employees in the deferred compensation plan looked to need some additional consideration, so we held back on that.
Okay. Why don't you walk us through the items? Hi.
Good afternoon. Sheila Payne from the Workers' Compensation Division.
And Steve Pressburg, also from the Personnel Department.
Okay, the Personnel Department has provided recommendations for several legislative proposals that would improve the efficiency and effectiveness. 3 proposals are from the Workers' Compensation Division. One would require physicians treating workers' compensation injuries to promptly inform employers of work restrictions in a clear and concise manner. The second would extend an employer's medical control for work-related injury from 30 days to 90 days to ensure greater continuity in healthcare services. The third would be to amend our California Labor Code section 4658 to allow employers to make a job offer to a disabled employee within 60 days after receiving a permanent and stationary report.
What is the current limit there?
The current limit now is once the doctor gives a permanent stationary determination based on the date that he gives that determination, we may not receive the report for several days. And therefore it prohibits us from using our entire 60 days. We would like to have that report once the analyst receives it in our office would be the time that would make it necessary to make the decision.
So it's still 60 days right now, it's just is when the clock starts ticking?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Mr. Zine, Chair of Personnel?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, we're good with those three? Okay. Why don't we go through the fourth one?
Well, the fourth one is a repeat from a year ago. It's from the governor's original healthcare proposal, and we've simply resurrected it because we believe it would effect a cost saving as well as improvement in the quality of care. Seems like we're paying twice, first for the health care that we negotiate for the providers, and then, of course, for workers' compensation. It's hard to get a handle on how much more we're paying, but it seems redundant to have two insurers for the same employee.
Okay, looks good as well. And why don't you walk us just through the fifth one, what your thinking is on that one?
The deferred compensation plan?
Yep.
Well, this was actually a recommendation that came from the board of the deferred compensation plan. They voted to have some sort of mandatory enrollment. Of course, it doesn't compel anyone to be enrolled against their will. They can decline. But it was thought by the board that this would be a good way to encourage immediate membership, savings for retirement, and of course a person can opt out of it at any time, whether even before it starts. But perhaps people in the crush of paperwork and benefit selection when they're new employees don't always get around to doing it, and so some employees don't.
What percentage right now do take deferred comp?
I don't know the answer to that.
Ballpark even, do you know?
Are you in it?
I'm in it.
We could do a show of hands in this room, but who knows? Who's not in deferred comp in this room? Anybody? Wow, look at that. Hey,
Are you up or down?
Do you want it mandatory?
You don't want to know that. You don't want to know how low it went.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, of course, it doesn't compel anyone to invest in any particular fashion either. The plan, as you know, has completely insured savings options as well as stock options and others. So
Aggressive investments.
it has as aggressive as someone wants or as conservative as someone would want.
But we could make those changes locally if we wanted to, just as city policy too. It wouldn't require a state mandate.
Well, I think it would
Automatically trigger.
because of the section of the government code that we noticed, which would prohibit otherwise a deduction from payroll.
See, I got a problem with this. Employees have a pension system, and that pension system's with LACER or with police and fire. There's two pension plans that they have. And deferred comp is an option. If people want it, then maybe the deferred comp providers need to go out and talk to the employees, encourage them to sign up. People get medical insurance, whether they want one of the two companies that do business with the city, they go out, they market their product. I think what they're asking is for us to mandate taking money out of people's pockets to put in a deferred comp account, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent. Let the providers go out there and market their product instead of compelling the employee to do this, because they're in a pension plan.
Well, there's really only one provider, and that's the deferred compensation plan itself. A person joins the plan and then chooses what investment options they want.
And it comes out of their paycheck.
That to whatever degree they want, anywhere from $15 to a higher percentage of their take-home pay.
To what the maximum is provided by state law or federal law.
There's a federal maximum annually. This is to use the word aggressive. It's sort of an aggressive approach to convincing people to do it, but again, with a proviso that they would be advised that they don't have to do it
Yeah, but
if they really don't want
I don't
to.
think that, see, what we're doing then is they're marketing for them. Let them market the program. Let them go out there and market with the employees to tell them, like Aflac. Aflac goes out and markets. We don't force people to get into Aflac. If they wish to do that, they can do that. And this, good, bad, or indifferent, and I've been in deferred comp for a long time. I wasn't in it originally, but I was.
A lot of
convinced-
people, I think the membership in the deferred comp plan goes up strongly as a person has been with the city for some time. And I think the experience of a number of people is that they wish they had done it sooner.
But they didn't have enough money to put in there when they first.
Well, that's
did it.
one possibility, and another is they just, like I said, they just didn't do it. There are many things to consider when they first become a city employee, and that's one, and it's not.
Some may not want to remain career employees. Some people
Right.
are, like, I've been with the city 40 years. That's a long time. Some people, like Avak, been with them a short time. But people have different terms with the city.
He's a rookie.
I just look at it as a marketing strategy, because the more money they have, the more money they invest. And people have these aggressive accounts. Because I spoke to the deferred comp folks recently. There's a lot of people, if they look at their accounts, would be very upset with the way the stock market.
It's best not to look right now.
It's best
But-
not to look. So
All right, why don't we hold on
I
this
don't-
one?
I don't
We'll
have a-
we'll
I have
hold
a
on this
problem. I
one.
have a problem with it. I think if we want to talk to the unions,
We don't want to force our city clerk into this, so we'll hold off on it for now.
and as the chair of the personnel committee, I would have some real problems. If you want to bring the unions in and have the unions.
Well, my assumption is that this would clearly be a meet and confer issue in any event.
That's right.
So.
All right, let's hold on that one, and let's move to other four then. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Great. The police department submitted 3 items yesterday afternoon, so we will bring that back to you at the next meeting.
Did fire submit anything?
Fire did send a letter. They did not have any recommendations at this time. We also heard from the city clerk, the zoo, and the Bureau of Street Lighting. They did not have any recommendations at this time either.
The zoo didn't have any recommendation about elephants?
They did not.
The mandate that all cities with 4 million or more should have an elephant?
All right. With that, let's go to Department of Transportation.
Transportation is the last department on the agenda.
We've been going since
Yeah.
10 o'clock this morning.
I know.
We get punchy after 4.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Tom Drischler, Department of Transportation. I'm here to just to advocate a change, a tweaking, if you will, of the California Vehicle Code that would allow for the that would prevent the release of impounded taxi cabs or illegal vehicles for hire to lien holders. We found in recent months that there's a trend that the legal operators will they have a vehicle, but the lien holder of record is a car dealer or someone else that they know. And when we impound the vehicle, even though by law we can hold it for 30 days, there's this loophole that allows the lien holder to come out and get the vehicle out of impound right away. So we're asking to just change the vehicle code so if the car was impounded for illegal use as a illegal vehicle for hire as a bandit taxi, that they would have to remain in impound for 30 days, subject to impound hearing.
Okay.
Excellent work, Tom.
Thank you, sir.
Tom is the bandit for bandit taxi cabs.
Well,
Any kind of tool we can use to help reduce those.
we never stop trying.
Excellent, excellent.
All right.
I'm sorry that I can't speak to the second item. I have
Cannot.
nothing to do with that.
So is there anybody here who can? Okay.
No.
So it's to amend the parking cash-out program and the health and safety code to unbundle the cost of leased space for the provision of subsidized parking to determine cash value and authorize municipalities to require businesses to show proof of compliance with the cash-out law and Internal Revenue Code. Mr. CLA. can
I
you
will do my
translate?
best. The cash out program is actually a no cost to employers at this point, and employers who have 50 or more employees, I believe it is, who are subsidizing parking in their office buildings will provide a cash subsidy to employees who use public transit, carpooling, van pooling, et cetera, et cetera. The problem is that a lot of leases do not break out the parking subsidy as a line item in the cost of the lease, so employers don't know how much they're paying for parking and have difficulty determining what the subsidy is to their employees. So this would require that Elise have a line item in there that breaks out the parking subsidy costs so that employers could then determine how much they would subsidize their employees.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and move both those recommendations, unless you have any further questions.
good.
All right.
I do have a couple closing business items.
Please.
The first is that the mayor submitted a report yesterday with their legislative recommendations, both state and federal.
And those were in 4 categories, all right?
Yes, they had 4 categories. And we would recommend that you direct the CLA's office to evaluate those items and return with a report and resolutions on the legislative items in there. There were a number of items that relate to bills that were in the current legislation that are expiring, did not get passed into law. And what we would recommend on those is to come back as those bills are reintroduced or as new legislation as those occur. And then in our report, we'll focus on the new legislative proposals that the mayor has put forward.
Okay.
And
Yeah, let's work on turning those around quickly and thank the mayor's office for their work on this, and especially from the energy and environment section. The rest of the mayor's office, that's the standard to meet, so they have a really robust number of suggestions.
they've been very helpful in working with us on the legislative program, and we appreciate their efforts.
Super.
The other is that the CLA's office would like to recommend actually a legislative
You guys have your own
proposal.
recommendation? Oh my
We
God.
do have one
What is it?
recommendation that I have not prepared a resolution for. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to refer that to the CLA for
yes,
further
there
study.
you go.
What is it?
The idea is to request a state constitutional amendment to reduce the voting requirements on new taxes. Currently, on most new taxes, there's a 3/4 requirement, 66%. To pass the new tax. On education, the voters reduced that to 55%, and so we are recommending that we go forward.
The second category, too?
We did, and I can't, or there may have been legislation that was introduced last year to reduce it for another.
Housing or transportation?
Yes,
Okay.
transportation is what it was.
It didn't pass, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Sure. I'm good with that. Mr. Zhang?
I have to review that one.
All right, well, let's go ahead and bring that for
Okay.
further study. Or
Okay.
let's move forward. You want to, is there going to move forward for now?
Yeah, move forward.
Okay, all right, we'll move forward.
okay.
Thank
We'll
you.
prepare the resolution and bring it into
All
council.
right, great.
Just want to see what loopholes you have in there.
Okay.
All right, and how many years has Avak been with the city, Mr. CLA? Yes. You work with him, do you know?
32 years? Yeah.
That's a personnel matter.
That's a personnel matter. Yeah.
As the personnel chair, I will find out.
All right, we'll refer that to Personnel Committee. Thank you. With that, we will adjourn this meeting. There's no public comment, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.